After nearly a decade in human resources, Peter has made a leap into personal training. His story is about leaving the office life and finding the courage to chase purpose.
I'm realizing now the importance of living a healthier lifestyle and the benefits it has for you down the line. And I was terrified that if I just surround myself with this, it would take the love that I have for it.
But when was that moment when you finally said, I'm going to take this leap? Welcome back to Push Yourself Podcast. Today, I am joined by my high school brother, Piero Bruno. After nearly a decade of working in human resources and nonprofit, Peter has made a leap into personal training. His story is about leaving the office life like he never fit into, balancing family and finding the courage to chase purpose in the messy middle journey. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
How would you describe what you do right now without saying the word HR, human resources, or trainer?
That's a good question. I would say that I'm in the business of creating healthier routines for people, routines that they can follow till the very last day.
Kind of setting up people for life.
That's the end goal for sure.
So when you look at your life right now, what feels most aligned with who you are? Working behind a desk or working with people, helping them push themselves through those reps, that pushing that weight?
So what I align with more so, at least nowadays, is definitely helping people better themselves physically. And I'm realizing now the importance of living a healthier lifestyle and the benefits it has for you kind of like down the line and later in life. You know, you compare like your average person, say, who doesn't do much physically and what they kind of look like years down the line compared to somebody who remains physically active throughout their whole lives. And, you know, those people who remain physically active, you see them going about their daily lives, walking. They can go on hikes and go on long walks and play with family members and kids and stuff like that and have no problem doing it. Whereas you have people on the other side who, you know, have trouble doing these basic everyday things. You know what I mean? So to be someone who helps somebody out of that situation means the world.
Can you give an example, or maybe you work with somebody, maybe a family member, or maybe one of the clients that you saw a clear example where physical fitness makes a tremendous difference?
Oh, yeah. So I see this one woman, and she has serious, like, it's called knee valgus, where your knees are like pointed inward. And she was having major issues, just like walking or getting up off the couch, just extremely basic things, right? And we were working together. We've been working together for a few months now. And the change, and this is like from her words, she said the changes have been drastic. Like I mentioned, getting up off the couch, she is seeing that it's like no longer an issue for her to, you know, just pop up off the couch and go grab something or whatever the case is. And one of the things, at least one of her long-term goals, is like she's been dying to go on like hikes and stuff like that. She loves like beautiful sceneries and stuff. And she's been dying to go that. And, you know, she was telling me every day that we work together, she feels like she's one step closer to being able to do that, you know, with no pain and stuff, and just being able to just be better at doing things that a lot of us take for granted. You know, you don't think that getting up off the couch is, you don't even think about it. You just do it. You know, for her, it has been a major issue, which over time is slowly being resolved.
So why do you think some people neglect their physical health? And I personally believe we should be taking care of our health in a holistic sense, mental health, physical health. But I see, and myself in the past included, sometimes I realized in retrospect there were points in my life where I was taking care of my health. I seen myself in other points where I've neglected, and now having turned 40, I can physically sense, I feel those little changes, the reaction time is just a tiny bit slower. Like, for example, literally yesterday, I went playing basketball. There's a group of guys here in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Some of them are in the 70s. And I realized this is the level where I guess I've graduated into, aged into. This is funner to complete because sometimes young kids come over and I can see the physical difference exemplified. But I feel like, okay, I am quite literally trying to push myself to hang in with these kids because I realize the end is coming. And this is not to be nihilistic. It's just to be realistic with the end. And I think it's only by realizing that the end is coming sometime down the road. You don't really know when, but you are responsible to make that effort again, to push yourself to take care of your health as it dwindles down. But you see many individuals who completely negate their physical health. And I wonder, why? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it could be life in general is very stressful and people prioritize work and many, many, many other things over that. I mean, I agree. I think a lot of people overlook fitness and overlook their health. And I don't think that they actually realize the effect that it has on you until it's too late. You know what I
True.
mean? Where, like, I think some health problems are just unavoidable, especially as you get older. There are some things that you just will have to deal with. Heart problems, whatever. Sometimes it's genetic, and sometimes it is due because of maybe poor diet or whatever the case is. But I think it's up until those points where people like, oh man, I should take care of myself now. Where they should have been doing this long, long ago. And it's possible that those health concerns that they have now could have been completely avoided.
I've seen my son is 13 years old and he's recently had a really big growth spurt, and because of for sports, for lifting weights, and trying to get better into better shape than I was just a few years ago, gonna trying to at the same time instill this love. I'm trying not to force to love him, the strength training, physical fitness, but I realize it's very important. I myself had not joined the gym regularly. I think it was until maybe 29 or 30 years old. Before that, kind of I joined at the time it was Bally's, went for a few weeks and then stopped going. But regularly, I've joined in my late 20s, early 30s. I can't remember exactly, but I realized, oh, only if I started going regularly 10 years before. And I remember, oh, in high school, the weight training room and there was the class, I forget, it was a weight training class. I never took it seriously, and there was nobody to tell me, hey, this is something you should be doing. Even though I was involved in sports, like I know our high school didn't have any sports teams, but I played in after school at the local Y, and but kind of the other level of physical health wasn't never really imparted. But I want to turn this to maybe to fatherhood. I think you have two kids, right?
Yeah, two boys.
Two boys. So what are you trying to do? How are you trying to nurture that interest, or maybe you could call it a skill
It could be.
of weight training? What is your approach to frame it for your kids?
I look at it in in this time, I think it's becoming harder and harder to get your kids involved in some type of like physical activity. And there's no doubt my kids are 100% addicted to their iPads and Roblox and all these other things that they do on that. And, I think it's very, very difficult for them to break away from. But there are moments like, say, where I'll be working out at home, let's just say. And, I'll be doing my thing off to the side somewhere. My two kids are on the couch playing with their iPads, and they kind of like glance over and see what I'm doing. And it's always my youngest one who wants to kind of like join in and kind of like mimic what I'm doing. And he'll go grab like the little 5 pound weights and kind of like put them over his head and, oh, look, look what I can do, or, look at this, and he'll just go around the house picking up, a chair over his head and just picking up all these random things, um, you know, telling me how, oh, look how strong I am and stuff like that, right? And I think having them just exposed to it, and like you said, you don't want to force your kid into it, but just them seeing you do it, I think is already enough to kind of like instill that in their head. Maybe not right then and there, but maybe some point down in the future, because right now, they're kids and their interests don't lie there. I think at this point, their brains are all scattered all over the place. They have 1,000 things going in their head at one time. And, strength training to them at this point is probably like not even a thought, but the fact that they see you doing it and they see you doing it consistently, like I don't work out at home too often now. But when I do, both of them are usually there and they see it. And like I said, they try to mimic and stuff like that. And, I'm hoping that, at some point down the line, maybe them just seeing me, and they know I go to the gym in the morning and stuff, that I come back and they know that's where I am during that time where they don't see me. So I think them knowing that I do it and them seeing me do it are like really, really good ways of kind of like maybe introducing it to them.
It's that theory when a parent, you watch enough on YouTube or Instagram videos, there's oftentimes this example. Kids learn not when you tell them, but when you show them.
Sure,
You have to lead by example.
sure.
I think that's a big thing. Like there's probably a spectrum of kids who will have that motivation. Maybe you can call it, they would want to copy what you're doing, but the other subset of kids you literally have to drag with you. But
Yeah,
I think it doesn't matter which way you get there as long as they get there,
sure.
hopefully. Yeah,
Absolutely.
but for me, one of the great motivators to keep that fight of trying to stay fit or get fitter. I'll be honest, I need some work, but just at least to have the fight to keep being active, it's having the opportunity to play basketball with my son. So, for example, my father, I was born when my dad was already 37. So the time where I could kind of like he could play with me, he was probably already his health was already on the decline. And I consider myself lucky that I am just now 40, and this is the first summer that we were able to go and play with other adults. And he had the growth spurt, 5'8", and he's a
Right.
big kid, and he can play. Yeah, he's beginning. He's still on that basic entry level, but it was just fun. We can be on the same team. We can play against each other. But I was kind of so lucky to have that experience when I look at
That's
it. Again,
so
something that
awesome.
my father didn't have.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. Like, how do you view your role as a father, considering bringing up two boys?
Uh-huh.
General thoughts.
Oh, how do I consider my role as being a father?
Yeah. Very tough
Uh,
questions.
it is very tough, and to be honest, I think it is the most difficult thing I've ever done. You want to bring up your kids to be respectable men, right? And the thing is, and the thing is that you don't realize this up until you have kids, is like it never goes the way you intend on it going, right? Like before I had kids, I was like, oh yeah, my kids will never touch an iPad until they're 18 years old or whatever the case is. And that started very, very quickly where, they were given an iPad. I'm not going to say by who, but they were given an iPad. And, you see it start to like slowly take over their lives and stuff like that, right? And like you just you just want to do the very best for them, and what you think is the very best might not be the very best, in maybe that stage of their life. So it's something that is on a daily basis always changing. Not every day is the same exact day as the one before. The other days might be harder. Some days might be like the most enjoyable days of your lives and that you have with them. And it's just always changing, always changing. It's sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's extremely difficult, but you find little workarounds for all these little things, and in the end you hope that you did the right thing.
I've tried to frame it for myself in this way. So I think in life, the most important thing is peace of mind. As an example, if I think if you are on your deathbed, if you make it into your old age and you're dying, you will regret doing certain things or not doing certain things. Like you won't regret spending more time, nights, weekends working, but you will regret not building closer relationships with family members, with kids. So I think the point for me in life is to have the least amount of regrets possible, knowing full well there will be regrets one way or another, but let's try to minimize it. In terms of being a parent, I view it, as children, we try when we grow up, when we have kids, I believe most of us try to undo or do better than what we had from our parents, better life, which is natural. But I realize that no matter how you try, how hard you try to make it better, you might come up short, you might overdo it, and one way or another, it will possibly screw your kids up in one way or another. But it's the same fashion with life. Try to minimize the regret and maybe the amount of things that your child will say when they grow up. Oh, I wish this was the way that my parents behaved, things that they've done that I could have turned out better. I think there's no perfect way, but it's that the road that will lead to the minimal amount of regret and issues. And I feel like nobody makes it out perfectly. I think if you are well adjusted, that in itself, like too well adjusted, if you seem like too perfect, that's overcorrection in one way, which is like this is too much of a good thing is a bad thing. But I wonder if I could link up your transition working nonprofit, working in human resources, going to personal training now. When did you start getting an inkling that you want to make this pivot?
Like you said, there are many things that kind of changed me over. So one of them was like realizing that, you know, doing your 9 to 5, and not that there's anything wrong with a 9 to 5, but for me to just be sitting at a desk, uh, for 8 hours a day, and pretty much repeating the same jobs over and over, the same tasks over and over every single day, and it seemed like everybody, being in HR, you deal with a lot of other people's issues. All those issues are exactly the same. And it was like realizing that if I stay here, that will never end. And I'll just continue dealing with these things that are driving me insane. Sitting at a desk, dealing with like very, very immature problems, and problems that can be resolved by just speaking with maybe one another. I understand like in some situations, HR does need to step in and kind of like be a moderator for all these things. But it was things like that. So that was one thing. And then I think the second and probably most major was uh, after I started having many, many people tell me that this is what I should be doing. Because like anytime I would have a conversation, say about like just general fitness, and they would be like, so much about this and have like this way of talking about it that makes me want to do it, right? That kind of like motivates you to do it. And I was very hesitant at first, mainly because like I was thinking, and I've told so many people this, where like I was hesitant on doing it because I didn't want it to take away the love that I have for it now. Because like once you get into that whole world, your daily life revolves around the gym. It revolves around working out. It revolves around just that whole atmosphere. And I was terrified that if I just surround myself with this, for as long, like, I don't know, figure 8, 9 hours a day or whatever the case is, that it would take the love that I have for it out of myself, and I wouldn't want to do it for myself anymore because I'm just surrounded by it so much.
Right.
Like when I go to the gym for myself, the hour and a half or the 2 hours that I spend there are 2 hours that for me to be selfish, for me to focus on myself and doing that, being in the gym just in general just gives you peace of mind. I feel absolutely amazing after I leave. I feel like it sets up my day. Nothing I'm going to do later in the day will be as hard as the workout that I put myself through.
But what's that moment when you finally said, I'm going to take this leap?
That moment was when my wife was like, you're not getting any younger. And she was like, if you're going to do it, you need to do this now, right? Because at that time, we were in a position where I can make that shift from HR to personal training. So um I had this time to study. Um I had the time to get myself working in a gym, and then now I'm trying to do things more for my own self, like not working for a gym, like just working as my own boss pretty much. And I felt like that was the moment, and I had to take the opportunity, otherwise I would have lost it.
What do you think other people were seeing in you? But why haven't you thought about it yourself? I know I'm going to elaborate just a little bit. I think
Sure.
there's a tendency, maybe it's the failure or if it's the way that the educational system is set up. A lot of kids fall through the cracks and they just go on meaningless, menial jobs. The jobs are important. There are always jobs that have their own specific function, but there is the flip side of it. People who are doing the job, they don't feel uh, you don't have, I was about to say satisfied, but you don't have to feel satisfied in a job. You can have many motivations to do a job. You can have a calling for it. I would be doing this job if I wasn't getting paid for it. Or I want to climb the corporate ladder. That's one of the other motivations. Sometimes you need just to work for the work itself, for the paycheck or the benefits. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want to ask to go back a little bit before that. How come a lot of kids in high school, college fall through the cracks where they never have the opportunity to realize not a specific profession that they might want to do once they finish their schooling, but even the more general sense, the pathway. They don't realize, at least not the whole spectrum, but a little sliver of that where they might want to explore. And I guess since you doing this pivot at 40, what do you think happened? What was something that could have been done?
It's it's so I think that's an extreme, well, for myself, an extremely difficult question to answer, because I mean, again, I can only speak for myself. Like, again, school wasn't the thing for me. Going through school was just extremely difficult for me. And I mean, you could chalk it up to a bunch of different things. In the end, I take accountability for the lack of effort I put into it. Um, I do think, though, that at least in the high school that we went to, and I don't know if you had the same experience as I did, um, being that being that we did go to the same high school, I just felt like teachers didn't care. Um, like it was like they were just going through the motions, teaching kids. And I remember plenty of times where, math for sure wasn't my best subject. And there were plenty of times where, I would raise my hand in class because I had a question about, how to solve whatever the problem was. And, their first reaction was like a sigh, or just like they would just breathe out, or like that every time that not only myself but other kids had the questions. They were hoping that, or what it seemed like, they were hoping that kids just got it like that. You know what I mean? And not everybody has that mentality where, something is said to them, it sticks, and they know it like right after that. Like sometimes it takes a little bit more, like a little bit more effort to.
It sounds like what you're describing is there was just one cookie cutter approach to everybody, and there was no nuance. But we as human beings are unique. We are unique, but we also have a lot of similarities. But you do need a different approach to individuals who kind of maybe fall out of that, who are at the extremes. Let's kind of play devil's advocate. Well, the teacher probably has to get through the lesson plan.
Sure.
So it might not necessarily be the fault of the teacher, but it's just the way it's set up. You said, like, you don't know what my experience was. Well, I want to say the guidance counselor in high school, I've spoken to my guidance counselor only once when I was applying to college. Outside of that, there weren't any conversations. My perspective is it's a systematic failure. And system isn't failing in general, it's just the way it is, or maybe the way it was. I should qualify the way it was when we went to school. It's not setting up for that cliche of success. Looking at it as an adult, from pre-K to the grade 12 to college, it is preparation to enter the workforce. So looking back at it now, I'm thinking, okay, there should be a gradual, little by little buildup towards that. Oh, you're in high school now, end of high school, college. You are framing your mindset towards going to the workforce in a few short years, 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
And this is where these conversations should happen with kids. But I want to place a little bit of the responsibility on parents as well. And the reason not that parents should bear the brunt of the responsibility, but it is because the school, at least when we went there, was lacking in that regard. Like my story in high school, actually my story begins before high school. Up until I was 13 years old, my goal was the MBA.
Sure.
And at 13, something clicked. I remember, I had my growth spurt got to nearly 6 feet. I love basketball. I would play it in the summer, in the winter, in indoors. I would find at the JCH Center in Brooklyn. It was practically my life. But I realized it's my passion. I love it, but I ain't making it to the NBA. So when it came to college, coming here when I was 10 years old, my parents were not college graduates back in Soviet Union. Their literal suggestion was, apply to Hunter College because they have a good physical therapy program. And that is because in high school, playing basketball, I broke my ankle, had a few sprains, and I had to go for physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And this was their suggestion. Oh, you've been to a physical therapist office, you like sports. They suggested I should go there. Okay, and I did. I applied to Hunter. I got in, and in order to go be in the PT or the pre-physical therapy program, you had to get to statistics. And as it were, I barely got a Regents diploma. Even though I failed 2 classes, I crawled my way to get a Regents diploma by passing 2 out of the 3 math Regents. But intro math was a problem for me. And I'm not even talking about statistics.
Right.
My parents didn't speak English. I didn't really go to them often. And it's not a unique, I guess it's an immigrant experience. You just get by. And in college, okay, I'm not going to physical therapy, even if I'm considering that as a pathway, because I can't simply get to that level of math that's required to go beyond into the more medical biology classes. What do? Well, I happened to utterly enjoy my intro English 101 class in college. I utterly enjoy. I got an A+ because I somehow was invested in the reading and everything. But how do I connect it to my career job? I don't know. Then I needed to speak with a college advisor about something about declaring a major, and she asked me some questions, and then, oh, you like this? How about you try a media course? And I followed the advice. I love the communications. I was a double major, English and media studies. I graduated. I thought I wanted to do marketing, but then I got my first job in marketing post-graduation. My son was already more than 1 year old, could be like nearly 1.5. And I lasted in that job for 4 months. And I realized I hated it. Like, I wanted marketing. I wanted to do creative stuff. I thought at that time I found my passion, English to communication. I love writing. I read books at that time when social media was just starting out, like Gary Vee, Seth Godin, kind of in that sphere, big names. And I was like, okay, let's do some creative stuff. Let's do something fun. And once I got to the actual job, I realized this isn't for me. Having that realization post college, post graduation, having the full time salary job that paid me much more than I ever got paid before, I hate this. So like, yeah, hindsight is 2020, but I'm like, my hope was, I wish, I hope, there was some way that our system was more catered to not just drilling in these math questions, what the general experience is, but geared towards exploration and trying to figure out, like you said, you hated school, right?
Yeah,
Not everyone has to love it, and not everybody has to go to college. I think,
true.
just because I went to college doesn't mean somebody has, because I think we as human beings are unique individuals. We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. We're better in some areas than others. But what do you think? What was that looking back? Like, the failure, was it the education system? Or do I just say it outright?
Uh, I mean, like I said, in the end, the only person that is at fault for it was like myself, 100%. Like I take that I take the responsibility of like my failure in school because I think rather than, you know, being like, okay, yeah, this is hard. Um, what can I do to help myself get better? Because like, I mean, you were mentioning like you couldn't go to your parents. My parents helped me the best that they could when it came to my schooling and stuff. My father was working, I would ask my mom for help. And she did her best to help me. Things just didn't click, so and I can see this now, especially as a parent, helping my kid with his schoolwork and stuff like that, that it's not easy to help. It's not, well, with certain things, it's not easy to help with. And rather than be like, okay, this is hard, what can I do to make myself better at it, right? Instead of doing that, I was just like, okay, this is hard. I just suck at school. I'm not going to get better at it, and I'll just do the bare minimum, and that's about it. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. Um
By the way, I want to say, I find it commendable that of the ownership. I think that says a lot. But we're talking about you being in your late teens, early 20s.
sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm thinking of myself back in that age, and I'm thinking, even when I had my son, that was like in my mid 20s. I'm like, oh my god, I was so immature even at that moment.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And the thing was, like math, for instance, my worst subject, there were so many times where like I knew my math class was next, and I'm just like, God, do I really want to sit in this class and, force myself to learn something that I'm not interested in, force myself to be in a place where it seemed like the teacher didn't want to be there or wasn't like, you know, uh, not wanting for every kid to succeed. I mean, I'm pretty sure they wanted their kids to succeed and stuff like that, but I just didn't get that feeling. So rather than sit through the class, I'd be like, all right, and I would just cut. I wouldn't even go. So, and that's one of the reasons why like I know that, I cutting wasn't the right thing to do. I know that, I'm missing out on information that could have potentially helped me get better at math. I knew what I was doing was not the way to do it, which is why, like, I take the responsibility of, you know, not doing well. I didn't put the effort into it.
Are you saying this from the perspective of now, or did you make that
No, no,
realization
no,
back
no.
then?
I'm talking about during that time. Like I would. like before I would cut math class, I would be like, "Ah, should I do it? Should I not do it?" Like I was going back and forth in my head, knowing that like I know it's the wrong thing and I chose the wrong thing, you know, and I knew what I was doing. It's not
You
like
think you know.
I think I do know, and even like as of right now, as of right now, I think that if I made different choices, things could have turned out differently. If I invested more, like Dewey had after school not after school, like you were able to meet with teachers like in between classes. You had
Bands.
free bands. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they were. You had free bands in between classes, and I know that there were teachers available to help me with math. They were sitting in the what was it, like the RC centers or RC rooms or whatever they
Oh,
were called. And I knew that teachers were there waiting for students to come up to them to help them with math, English, whatever, social studies, whatever subjects. They had different rooms for different subjects, of course. And I knew these teachers were there to help, and I willingly made that decision to not go for help.
see, I would qualify. Well, people mature at different levels, but we're talking about I was being like early to late teens, and I think from the physiological perspective, I believe scientifically, boys mature later than girls, and even up until probably your early or mid 20s, your prefrontal cortex, the decision making, if I'm not mistaken, part hasn't fully formed. So I think even if you are faced with knowing that you are making you want to make that moral, the better positive choice, that part that hasn't fully formed is keeping you from fully buying into that decision. So
Right.
to me, just not kind of not to just continue about this topic in itself, but link it to a broader theme of guidance counselors, but also mentors, or those being lucky to have those teachers who are so excited about their passion. Like for example, having had a lot of teachers, some were great. Some were, there are a lot of them were in between, but you were lucky enough to have to see those teachers who made you excited for the subject, even if it was math, but like for me, physics teacher in John Dewey High School where we attended, I was interested in physics, even though I was kind of awful at it. I barely passed the four semesters, the 4 cycles, and I didn't pass the regions. But I was awful. But I was so excited, and my hope was that this teacher can see my excitement for it. I'm trying to make my best effort to learn it. I am barely passing with like 70, 65. It's I think it's those relationships, it's those mentor like experiences that are missing, that a lot of kids who fall through the cracks are not there supported by these kinds of relationships
Right.
that
Right.
will help them to ensure that when they're in that instance, when they have to choose to go to the resource center or go to a teacher for assistance, they will actually follow through. That what is some time lacking. But to connect to the question to what you're doing now, do you think if nobody had told you, do you think you would have seen it in yourself?
You know what? I think so. I I think so because I've had, in my time going to the gym, I've had people come up to me and ask for advice. Not people say that I should be a personal trainer, but like, how can I do this better or how can I do that better? And I would have like legitimate responses to them and responses that actually helped. And like I would notice that these people who would come to me for advice, I would see them put that advice into use. And I would notice that whatever lift or workout that they were doing got that much better. And like I'm just like, okay, like he or she used the advice that I gave them and they are benefiting majorly from it. And I would see that. And I guess it's like in cases like that where I'd be like, okay, I know what I'm doing here.
Things started to click. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
I think so. It's like once you see people put your advice into play and then you see them, like, I don't know, let's just say they were doing, I don't know, something for shoulders, and you see them use the advice that you've given them, and then over time, of course, you see their shoulders getting stronger, their shoulders getting bigger, and then they come up to you, I don't know, 3 4 months down the line and be like, the advice you gave me absolutely worked. I mean,
oh,
you can't deny that.
oh, right. And I guess you feel it feels right. It feels kind of the natural thing to do. And like, why
Mm,
wouldn't this be why wouldn't they just kind of make this a job and get to do this as a regular job? But
right.
focusing on that moment when you decided to make this transition, was that transition on a personal level when you're leaving again 9 to 5? Nothing wrong with working a 9 to 5, kind of, I guess, the steady paycheck versus making this transition to something that feels the right thing to do in the heart, the right thing to do at heart, but knowing that the road to get there is so, it's unpredictable. It's not a guaranteed paycheck, and a lot more of yourself you have to invest and follow through and make those right decisions. And there will be a lot of growth, but also a lot of pain and
Well,
instability. So how was that like on a mental level, and having that support network to push you through to kind of finally make that break and finally pivot from HR into personal training?
terrifying. To say the least, it was terrifying. Um, I've always been I've always been afraid of like failing at that. Like deep down inside, I know when it comes to fitness, I think I'm extremely capable. But there's always that little like kind of like demon in the back of your head that is just like, oh, if you do it, you might mess up, you might fail, and you're just going to look ridiculous. You've wasted this time, you've wasted this effort, and all this energy that you put into it is now going to amount to nothing, right? And there was a lot of times where I just had that voice in the back of my head telling me that. And like this is one of those moments like where the people that you surround yourself with, the support system that you have makes the biggest impact on moments like that, where you yourself you're doubting yourself, you're questioning the moves that you're making, and then you have on the opposite side your support system telling you this is the right thing that you should be doing, you're doing the right thing. You're of course it's going to take time and you may make mistakes on the way and stuff like that, but you're going to find your path in the end. And, again, I thank my wife a million times over for biggest supporter, and, my parents now, biggest supporters of what I'm doing. My dad is going to the gym now and stuff like that. I have a few clients of my own, and, although it's not happening fast, it's happening. So the ball is slowly rolling, and then I'm hoping over time momentum builds up, and I'll have like a full-fledged, I guess, business of my own.
Yeah, you mentioned the support, the wives, and I have to kind of mirror that. Like, my wife has been very supportive, and the reason, a lot of my questions come from personal experience. And I guess to me, I've never been the one to quite see in myself any potential that I had, and if it hasn't been literally for the support of my wife, this project podcast in itself probably would never really gotten off the ground. It's that, like, I've been extremely shy in school, and even now, that kind of that imposter syndrome, but also being an introvert, kind of having taken various psychometric tools like MBTI. I know I'm an introvert, so I don't necessarily seek the spotlight, but having the support system, my wife supported me, like, yeah, you got something. Even if it's that something really rough, that support was such that support was needed just to get past that discomfort and maybe hopefully to get better at it. Without the support, I would probably never get on camera. I used to be very self-conscious of my own voice. I would cringe, and I think everybody cringes when they hear their own voice. But having edited, like this is I think the eighth recording, having listened to myself for hours, I got past that cringe factor of like, oh my God, I'm such a douchebag for this, or but it's a support. Now, when I asked you how did it feel, you said terrifying. I would, I guess, expect any other answer. But what, being on this side of the pivot, still in the early stages, what are some of the things someone who's trying to make a pivot or begin in personal training industry might not realize what makes it so tough? And the reason what I say is we all see personal trainers with a lot of followings, people starting out. You see the best, you see the positive, the polished things. But I've realized with age, and I think most people realize with age, with maturity, that we only see the glamour. So what I'm getting to is, like, in building your business, in making this pivot, what have been the things that you didn't expect to come up that you realize it's a hurdle to get through?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, like yourself, I am also, on the shyer side, and, I'd rather just be to myself, and, I don't talk to very many people. That is one thing that you for sure need to get over, being on this side where, you need to talk to people. It's your advice that they're seeking, and you need to be the one to tell them this advice. And yeah, maybe at first, just like, at first I was kind of like, I guess, not confident in, like, telling them that advice, and it would come out like words jumbled. I would, it just wouldn't come out as confident. But over time, after speaking to a lot of people, and, getting to know what goals that it is that they are trying to achieve, um, it becomes easier to explain it to them, what they need to do, and in a way that they can understand it, and in a way that seems doable for them. So explaining your advice in a way that is understandable to somebody who's not involved in the whole fitness space. Another thing is, see, I'm gonna have to think about this one.
When you said that, having to explain fitness advice to somebody who's not in the fitness space, I thought of the time that I had to, I was coaching youth basketball. And having grown up, loved basketball on the amateur level, and you think, okay, I love the game. I feel like I can do this. And having been thrown into that experience, it was a experience of growth. When in the beginning, I couldn't in my head realize, I feel like I'm explaining to kids a proper way to do it, but they're not getting it. And I would get in my head frustrated, like, why aren't they picking it up? Like, why, it's literally like, what's wrong with them? It wasn't inward, like, what's wrong with me? And I realized, oh, I was simply not explaining it on their level. If you are explaining something where you're here on a higher level, somebody here a little lower, you have to yourself bridge the gap to not go to their level, but just above that level. So you can pull people up. And I realized only afterwards, having that experience, like, oh, I was just not bridging the gap myself, which is my responsibility to pull them up. There was nothing wrong with them, because the process I see in itself, when you are working with someone in your position of a coach, a mentor, it's not that you are giving your experience to them. You're trying to pull it out. You're trying to have these individuals you're working with bring it out of themselves. So it's not anything that you're giving to them. It's something that they already have in themselves. You're just trying to shape it to help them discover it on their own. And
Right, right.
it was a painful realization, something with me, but it's also an experience of growth, which necessitates growth in a sense. I have to be the one doing the work if I had that responsibility or a job or a profession. What do you think
Right.
of that?
I mean, yeah, that's 100% true. Like, especially when it comes to, somebody who's, trying to get more fit, right? They want instant results. And with fitness is never, ever, ever the case. Like, it's one of those things where you need to celebrate the small wins, like the many small wins that you have over a significant amount of time. Where I've had clients where, they were very overweight. They wanted to lose a massive amount of weight over a short period of time. Um, and they just had this sense that it was doable in that period of time. And to explain to them and be like, you know, to lose 150 pounds in 3 months is not attainable, at least not in a healthy way. Um, and to kind of like explain to them, look, you know, forget about the whole end goal. Forget about the 150-pound loss that you want, right? Take it every 5 pounds. Celebrate every 5 pounds that you lose, right? Or every 10 pounds that you lose over a period of time, right? And then over time, you have so many of these small wins that they accumulate over time, not 3 months, but it'll accumulate to a 150-pound loss if you put in the time and you put in the effort to do it. And that's something that I think a lot of people uh kind of underestimate when they're taking on these big goals that they have in mind, that it's not something that's going to happen immediately. It takes an incredible amount of time and
We,
effort.
we, when you said that, it brought me back. Like, I work with kids, college age population, college students who are about to enter the workforce. And in having conversations, I always get the sense they're striving to land a job that is too far out of their reach. And this
Hmm.
mirrors what you just said. It's having those goals that are not necessarily unattainable. It's just I myself have this framework. If you're trying to get to a point B or point A, you have to expand it. You have to kind of pull it apart and realize where you are now in the beginning of your journey. You're trying to get to a point on your journey that's not that does not come right after. There are actually
Right.
many little points in between. So maybe kind of you're not, there's nothing wrong what you're doing. Everybody strives. Everybody, if you are striving towards something, if you have that motivation, if you have that drive for greatness, whatever you want to call it, sometimes you're going to have to make a little detour along the way. It's not going to be linear, but also there are going to be more stops along the way. So let's say if you are a college student and you want that 100K job, it's not necessarily out of reach if you get lucky, but most of the time you're going to have to get to one job, but to the second one, to the third,
Right.
to grow. And this is
Right.
kind of similar. You're where you want to be. You have to, I guess, in this role of a advisor, role of a personal trainer, you have to manage expectations. Like,
Sure.
it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going
Right.
to get to that 100K job in 6 months, right?
Yeah. And that's something that I do depending on the goal that they have. That's something that I explain right off the bat. And sometimes it's not what they want to hear. Sometimes they're like, "Oh, I guess you can't make it happen." Right? And it's put on me that I'm not the one able to make it happen. Not that it's they just get discouraged, is I think is what it is, when they hear that it's not going to happen in the time frame that they expect. Um but I think I've dealt with a lot of people who, once they hear that, I think they appreciate the honesty and being real about the goal that they have in mind, and giving them a realistic time frame to achieve that goal. And I think, from what I've noticed, a lot more people appreciate the honesty and the realness of you telling them, look, your your goal is not attainable in that amount of time to, break it down into many small wins. And then, like I mentioned before, over time, you'll hit your goal and you wouldn't even realize it.
Something tells me that individuals who have these unrealistic expectations, let's say in terms of their personal fitness, this is probably something that isn't the only delusion that they have in their personal lives. Like if some,
Possibly.
to me, this is why I love sports, athletic pursuits. It's a lot of, hopefully you try to get to a lot of wins, but it's also a lot of failures, a lot of losses. And that tells you a lot about yourself, but also the concept of in life, you know, you're going to fail a lot and you learn to manage your expectations. But the important thing is to look inwardly and kind of make decisions and learn something from your experience. So if you have this unrealistic expectation of, oh, I have this problem. If you have a few extra pounds and you have unrealistic expectations, like, oh, there are probably a lot of other things in your life where you have unrealistic expectations as well, because otherwise you probably would have done this yourself by now if you had that insight, knowledge, or the drive. You would have be able to do it yourself.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But to me, through all our journeys, now you mentioned your wife, the support network, but what about your kids? So I want to ask, if your kids look back, let's say 10, 15 years from now, what would you want them to say about this chapter in your life?
Uh, I would like to look at it. I would like them to look at it as a moment where their father took a leap of faith. You know what I mean? Where he just took a jump into the unknown. Like he didn't know if he was gonna succeed. He didn't know if he was going to fail. I would like them to look at that moment and be like, if they were ever in a situation where they needed to take that jump or that leap of faith, that they would have the support system and confidence to do it on their own too.
Why is that important, do you think?
I mean, without doing it, you might feel like, or you might end up just wasting incredible amounts of time. Like where I spent many years working in an office, where if I, made this change in career earlier on, I would have that much more experience in it and, possibly have a very successful business. Who knows? But it's something that requires a lot of time. And, um, I think I missed out on a lot of time by waiting so long to make that change.
Like, I know I mentioned regret in the beginning, and this hits kind of to that point,
Right.
spot on. Like, and I don't mean to be speaking for you, but what I'm taking away from this is like you've made that decision to cross a thing off your list to do, so to speak, versus having that later on to think about what if I later on, having not done this, you would have regretted not doing it. The what
Oh
if
yeah.
would have been there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Hands down, I would have
Right.
regretted it.
So looking back on your work, looking back at your office work, how would you describe, or like how in one word you describe the office life versus gym life?
Oh, office life, robotic.
Robotic.
For me, it was very, very robotic. Um, like I would just again just spend hours, repeating the same jobs over and over again, and it pretty much got to a point where I could be I could do the job with my eyes closed. At least the administrative part of it. Of course there are times where, you have to kind of like maybe think outside the box and things change a little bit outside of the usual routine that you have. But for the most part, uh the job to me was very robotic. And to compare it to personal training, it's ever changing. Like there's so many things, like new workouts are created, new routines are created. There's, you could change from strength training to running to doing like CrossFit type workouts to doing like powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting. It seems like there's so many different things that you could jump into, like if you just so happen to get tired of doing one thing, you could just quickly change and start running. You want to run a marathon? Okay, you start training to run a marathon. You want to start doing snatches and clean and jerks? You start training for that. You want to start competing in CrossFit competitions? You start training for that. You can you get tired of one thing, you could just move on to the next thing. And it seems like there are all these new things coming out. I think High Rocks is the new, I don't know if you've ever heard of that. High Rocks is this new thing. It's like similar to, like, I don't know very much about it, but it's similar to like CrossFit, and you could take like a partner with you and do it as like a team and stuff like that. It's there's just so many avenues you can take. Once you get bored with one thing, you can easily jump into the next.
So among all of that myriad of things you can practically endless list of exercises and workouts that you can do, what is your favorite workout for yourself?
Oh, squatting,
Squatting.
hands down. Yeah. I think it's I think it's such a beautiful movement. And it's one of the things that, like, I started paying very, very close attention to Olympic weightlifting, and like 90% of that is just squatting. And just the movement itself, I love the way it looks. It makes your legs incredibly strong, and just watching people do it and teaching people how to do it, and see them succeeding in it when they do, I think it's such a great thing. So that's my favorite. That's my go-to. Leg day is my favorite day.
I am jealous in a way because for me, squatting, I love squatting. It's not, I'm going to tell you in a moment what's my favorite one, but squatting, I'm like, wow, your knees must be feeling well. This might be pretty good because to me, when I squat and then you like leg, I'm like, I hear things. I guess it's
Uh-huh.
the ligaments moving and it's like terrifying at times.
Uh-huh.
But like, but like, I know you have to keep doing it. Okay, maybe I'm gonna, keep the weight slow to continue doing it. At 40, I can't. There's only so much progress I can make. Maybe just maintain. I keep doing it. But like personally, like, I love deadlifts. It's that feeling of obviously it's the heaviest amount of weight I can lift, pull,
Right.
and it's the feeling. Yeah, this is a big number. I can doing it. Everything feels so tight afterwards, and the muscles
Uh-huh.
get tight. You kind of strangely feel strong because of that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, doing any type of like any type of heavy lift, I think the after effect is just amazing. Like you said, you just feel powerful. And it's like like it's such a boost to the ego. I mean, yeah, maybe some people might not be deadlifting, 1,000 plus pounds or whatever the case is, but when you're lifting or deadlifting or squatting a weight that is heavy to you and you succeed at doing it, like after you do it, it's like 100% ego boost. You feel amazing afterwards. And like I mentioned before, like that might be the hardest thing that you do all day. You know what I mean? Like everything else that you do after that, you'd be like, oh, at least it wasn't as hard as doing that.
Exactly. That's how I look at it. Exactly. If this is the physical at times, depending on the weight, if it's above you or not, it's like, oh my God, I have to, if I can hold this, if I can press it, if I can push it, it's like I survived it because otherwise
Right.
that weight can kill you. And it
Yes,
is boosting your confidence, your ego, I guess, in a positive sense, but it kind of makes everything else in comparison that much lighter.
absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
So, Peter, thanks for sharing your story and your honesty today. For those listening, where's the best place they can connect with you and follow your journey?
Instagram would be the best place, and you can find me at fitness_for_everyday_life.
Thank you, Peter. I will definitely make sure that this is in the episode notes. and the link to the Instagram account, folks. Make sure to check Peter out, follow the journey, get inspired. Make use of this kind of a story if you're thinking about making a pivot, kind of making that leap. It's never too late. And folks, everyone tuned in, remember, growth comes in the moments when you least feel ready for it. Keep going, keep showing up, and always continue to push yourself.